Budget Committee, 26 or 25 to 27. Hello, YouTube neighbors. And we will start with the roll call. Mr. Steve, if you want to go first.
Steve Sims. Leonard Hayes.
Luke Cranston.
Jordan Ort.
Jonathan Penrice.
Ken Carey.
Denise Bush.
Brian Quigley.
Damian Santani.
David Patty.
Brent Walker.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff and the other department heads for being here. And do we have any announcements? Does that come from staff? Because I don't have anything.
Chair, can I just make a comment? Because I wasn't here for the beginning of the meeting, and I went back and watched it. It's very important to speak into the microphone and to make sure that your microphone is on, because the questions that were asked and any comments that were made when your microphone wasn't on, it was very hard to hear those. So just try to make it a point to speak into the microphone, please.
Got it. Okay, any announcements?
James has some announcements.
We do have one more replacement that's pertinent to the conversation today. So right behind your agenda, you should have had one document, 3-hole punched, and it's just kind of in the middle of a policy and procedure. So I wanted to do this all at the same time again, but this is page 117 of the document. So if you flip to that in your binder, you can remove the old page 117 and add the new. And that brings to light this portion of the budget document, which is the policies and procedures, the fiscal policies. That is part of the budget document that you'll be approving. So I just wanted to bring forward that there are some changes that I've made to the fiscal policy. This was vetted in our finance team and then the management team. And the binder contains the new version of the fiscal policies, and then you've also got a track changes version. So this shows you what the old version was and the specific changes that we're requesting to be made. So the changes in total are mostly minor, but we've redefined how the city defines capital outlay, kind of putting some more parameters around that. And then we refined the reserve requirements. Those are the ending fund balance reserves, and we've made those a range. So we have a low requirement and then a high-end requirement. And if the balance is outside of that range, then we've added to the policy that we want to bring it within the range within 3 years and a plan to do that. And we've also made the reserve requirements percentages of the expenditures instead of the number of days of expenditures. So it's just an easier way to calculate that and a little bit more logical. So just wanted to bring your attention that when you approve the budget, this is part of the budget document, this policy will go into effect. So if is there any questions or concerns about that, this would be the time to raise it.
Just real quick, Budget Chair. I didn't get a copy of the policy with the edits and everything. Could I get a track changes copy when you get a chance?
That was actually in the supplemental materials, I think you got.
Okay.
Handed those out, so.
Okay, if it was with the supplemental materials, I'm just looking in the wrong file. Sorry.
But do we have extra copies?
I don't know that I got it either. Last night?
So look in the pocket, but I think those were the ones that we handed out to you when we handed you the budget document last Monday ago when we had the work session.
We got another one last night.
Okay.
It's just non-punched. It's not punched. It's on your front pocket. That's what it is.
Do you have a pocket in your binder?
This just went through it too, and I don't see it, but
Okay.
look again. Not punched, right? There it is.
Got it.
And then I did want to bring to your attention the long-term forecasts. That's also in the supplemental material. And I wanted to just point out that we've had a few changes in that philosophically. I think it's kind of a reputation, many cities do it this way, that they always look dire or never meeting policy or often not meeting policy. So I've tried to make it a little more realistic, and by that, we're not just assuming that the budgeted numbers are the actual expenditures, because in fact, it's very difficult to spend 100% of your budget and not go over. So I've looked at the historical percentages that are typically spent in each of the funds and kind of assumed we would spend a little bit more than what the average was to continue to be a little bit conservative. But this reflects more reality. So they aren't exactly budgeted numbers that we're showing spent, but more of a projected reality. Having said that, though, and I do believe that they are still a little bit conservative, not nearly as much as they were in the past, but I do think that the general fund is really tight, and there's not as much wiggle room as in the past. Obviously, if we're allocating more money to the street fund, that eats into it, so it's something to consider. So that's all I wanted to say before we got started. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Brandt. Next item on the agenda will be approving the minutes from last night. Approving the minutes from the May 12th, 2025 Budget Committee meeting. And if you guys have all had a chance to, your minutes are attached to tonight's agenda. If you've had a chance to look at them and review them. And when you're all done, if one of you would like to have a motion to approve the minutes from last night.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget minutes as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any discussion from the panel as to the minutes? Any questions? Nope. Okay. And shall we take a vote? Do we have a vote to approve the minutes?
You can either say all those in favor or ask for a poll of the committee.
All those in favor of approving last night's minutes?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Any noes? Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you. Next item on the agenda will be to take up and carry on from where we left off last night with the management team. And was that going to be our...
It will be me and Barry. As you recall, we left off last night with the Public Works Administration. Barry threw a lot of information at you. You guys had some questions. I want to make sure before we move on to the other funds that you don't have any additional questions on that, and then we can start with parks and go forward. So.
And if I might interject, since we learned a lot last night from Barry, I'm sure there might be a lot of questions. If I could politely ask you guys, before you blurt out your question, either raise your hand or lift up your name card, and that way we can call people out one at a time. Thank you.
So I'm not seeing any name cards for Barry. Oh.
Oh, it's
Oh,
Barry, if you could, please, could you repeat or explain again the power out at the water treatment plant and the upgrade it needs?
so we're going to get into, so I want to, right now, we're talking about the Public Works Administration as a total. We're going to go fund by fund, and so just to kind of keep us focused on each fund, I would recommend we wait until then, if that's okay. Okay. So, and as a reminder, I'm going to sort of do the highlights since I did them, and then explanation and detail Barry will likely fill in. So for the Parks Department, in 2024 to 2025, we had a few really exciting highlights. We received a grant from Marion County through their ARPA dollars to do a new parking lot and some clearing at Riverfront Park, and that's actually almost nearing completion of construction, so that's exciting. There'll be a lot of amenities that go on after that initial construction. We also received a grant from the Oregon Parks and Rec Department for Mill Creek Park Phase 1 development. Right now, that's in archaeological review, so it's a little ways away still, but that's very exciting. We did quite a bit of hazard tree removal. We repaired some rubber matting at Sandy Play Area. And then this has actually been a little bit discussed on social media these days lately. The community garden lease was not renewed at the existing location, so we do not have a community garden program, but that the Mill Creek Park does have plans for a community garden, so there will be a community garden in the future. That's just the highlights. There's obviously a lot of day-to-day maintenance and things like that were going on in the parks. For the biennium, again, you'll see this for all of the public works slides, an increased focus on asset management planning for deferred maintenance and replacement costs. That goes for the parks as well. We do have the operating levy that will be needed to sustain the current service levels in the park, additional staffing in the parks, and if it goes at the assumed level, it would also potentially allow us to open Wilderness Park up. We will be doing Mill Creek Park Phase 1 improvements, and also continue to look for opportunities to add additional amenities out there, continuing to identify opportunities for amenities at Riverfront Park South. There are some capital outlay costs in this budget that includes some playground equipment, a stand-on mower, a truck-mounted leaf vacuum, and some improvements to the Santiam Park gazebo. I believe all of those are still in. There might be, I think that's all in there. I just want to make a pitch, I guess, for the mower and the truck-mounted leaf vacuum. That's really trying to do things smarter, not harder. So we have a very limited staff, very limited resources, and so trying to save backs and bones and do things a little smarter rather than just sheer labor. So that's part of what goes into that. Barry, do you want to add anything?
Do as I'm told. Turn the mic on. No, I have nothing further to add directly to that. I will point out and add to what we said last night. The replacement value of our park system is currently about $31 million, and in deferred maintenance associated with the parks, we have about $10.5 million worth of deferred maintenance in the parks as it stands today. That's about 34% of the parks is in failing or poor condition.
I had a question about the mower and the vacuum, the leaf vacuum. Is that something we're getting so we can use it with the seasonal workers and kind of save the parks a little money? Or
I think that goes hand in hand, but we mow during the non-summer times too, so it's allowing us to, rather than having to blow the leaves on the trails or off of pavement, they'd be able to just sort of vacuum them up, and so it just allows things to be done faster, and so they'll be able to do more things in the park with the seasonal worker, but also regardless of the seasonal
Right,
worker.
okay,
Yeah.
thanks, I was just curious.
Jordan?
Okay, I have two questions. Have we seen any upticks in the rentals of the, at the parks, in any of the structures and things that they like?
The rental program is still kind of being announced, and we haven't actually hung the notices in the different places that can be rented yet. We've gone through the software and made the capability there. So we need to kind of do a social media blast and kind of push it out there and put those signs up in the parks. So that will be soon. We wanted to do it before, like the weather got real nice, but been busy. But so to answer the question, no, the rental patterns I think are pretty much stayed about the same right now.
But we have had some shelters rented, so that's exciting that people have had the opportunity to do that. It just hasn't been, as extensive as we might have next summer.
I was going to say, because I have had people ask me. So we have had people rent them. Okay. And then can you just kind of just expound a little bit more on the community garden lease?
So that property was part of the NORPAC property, and the city had a lease through NORPAC.
Oh,
When
yes,
that
okay.
property was sold, the new owner allowed that lease to continue, but they have plans to redevelop it, so we knew it wasn't going to be
Okay.
forever. So,
Gotcha. Thank you.
Jonathan?
I see you mentioning Riverfront Park South a number of times, and I'm just trying to wrap my brain about which one that is. Is that on the Lynn County side of the Santiam, or is that on the Marion County?
it's on the Marion County side. It's because Lynn County is not in the city, so
Okay.
it's on our side of the river. Just sort of right in front of the water treatment plant, right before you go over the bridge into Lynn County.
Okay, it's not the part of Riverfront by the dog park.
That is correct. It is, that's, I differentiate it by saying it's the Riverfront Park South. Riverfront Park proper is near the dog park. This is essentially
Okay.
the southern,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was making sure that that's what we were referring
Yeah.
to. Thank you.
Brian?
All right, Barry. Excluding the pool, because I don't think we're including the pool in the parks, right? So what does deferred maintenance look like in a park setting?
Okay, we have...
You can see it on the street, obviously, right? What does it look like?
Oh, I have to talk into the mic, don't I? Deferred maintenance in the park includes such things as repaving, irrigation maintenance, irrigation replacement, seat replacement, anything that's in the park itself, physical asset, children's play sets. At the moment, we're actually trying to glue children play sets back together, which I personally have a little bit of a problem with, in that there is failure of our failures. So there are several and many items across all our parks that in actual fact have been removed from the parks because they have already failed and have not been replaced. The seatings, the benches, are being maintained on an ad hoc basis as our parks people have time available, materials available to in fact do that. So there is a list of parks items, including, as I said, physical assets that are in the parks, adding up to a total value of about $31 million as it stands today across all our parks. And looking at the age and replacement requirements for those items, we have about $10.5 million of it failed or in poor condition.
Okay, thank you. I think it's important to highlight that. I don't think that the first perception of when you hear maintenance, you refer to mowing or the trees or...
Right, trimming trees or weeding gardens is what people think of when they look at the parks. But
Yeah,
in
no,
actual
thanks.
fact, we have a lot of physical assets in them.
And I'll add to, so Bob does an amazing job and is exceptionally frugal and creative. And what Barry is referring to, so he's a certified playground inspector, so he inspects the stuff and makes sure it's safe. And there was a crack in actually 2 slides. One of the slides would have cost over $7,000 to replace, which we didn't have in the budget. And he did research and found a way to get like a plastic welding thing. It's not pretty and it's not ideal. Again, as a community, I feel like we deserve better, but it's allows the slide to stay open for now, but we need to have...
Unfortunately, it failed.
Oh, it failed? Oh, I
Yes.
didn't know that. So never mind. So there you go.
Yeah, Bob did do an amazing job practicing, going out and using equipment that was, relatively expensive to buy to, in actual fact, try and make repairs on items that are well beyond their economic and functional life. And he's trying to make them continue to be viable. And in this particular instance, the exercise failed, but we will in actual fact be able to reuse that slide, take it down from being a slide and fix it to a wall and it'll become a climbing frame. So we are trying whatever we can to in actual fact keep things operational.
Luke?
Regarding the community garden, do we have any record of usage on that, or is it?
I'm sure we do. I do not have that handy. I know it has been, it's well used, but it's not used as well as it could be used. I believe that there's always been some vacant spots, and then as the season has gone on, it's been a little bit less used, but I'm hearing with people whispering, perhaps we have an answer.
We've had 16 plots recently, and I think almost, if not all, almost all of them have been used in the past few years.
Okay, thank you.
Jordan?
So speaking of the equipment, because I feel like a lot of times when we talk about the parks and stuff, we talk about mowing and tree removal and then we talk about the levee and how it's going to keep the existing, what we're doing existing, but we don't really talk about the maintenance of the equipment that's at the parks, the play equipment. What is the plan for replacing the aging equipment? Is that going to be part of the asset management coordinator's position?
Want to take it?
Is that
Go ahead.
part of their job?
I will say,
we never talk about that. We never budget for it. We
do budget to a certain extent. We do have park maintenance in the budget. We have some equipment repair and replacement. I think it's not at the level that it really needs to be at, and that's what Barry is getting at. Do you want to add on to that?
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
To answer your question, Jordan, there is, as Julia's just said, ongoing maintenance on a day-to-day basis. We have Bob out there physically fixing things on a everyday basis, and he takes his own personal pride in making sure that the woodwork and everything associated like that is done as practically and as economically as possible. But the issue is that we have equipment, and I'm going to illustrate it like your car. If you run your car and just keep on running it and keep on running it, now it's going to fail. And that's where we are with the park's equipment. It eventually ages out. Now, to answer your question on how that's going to be managed in the future, or hopefully managed in the future, we don't know what we don't know right now. And that is part of the asset management exercise, is to, in actual fact, get a realistic understanding of what there is in the parks. We do not have an asset register, a formal asset register of our assets across the organisation as it stands today. And therefore we do not have a true understanding of what, firstly, the condition of those assets are, because we don't have an asset register, and we don't know what we actually physically and practically need to spend to, in actual fact, maintain and keep those in good order. So given that we do day-to-day maintenance, which is basically firefighting as we call it at the moment, so something fails, we fix it, we have not historically put money aside to, in actual fact, replace assets that fail, or in actual fact maintain assets into prolonged life of the assets. And that's what the asset management plan is all about, is making sure that we prolong the asset's life as long as practically possible and have a plan for replacement in the future. At the moment we don't have that physical plan in place.
Okay. I kind of along those lines, like, does the Parks Board kind of have goals on what they want to see our parks look like and do? And so when we see, like, the Santiam Park has, like, cracks in the playground floor that have been there, like, is that part of what our
You're
Parks
highlighting
Board
the
does?
issue.
I mean,
It's
they
like-
do that, and they help identify things. They help set some priorities. I think they would love for the city to do a ton of things and a ton more things. The challenge is there's a limited budget to do all the things that need to be done.
Sure.
So yeah, they talk about it, and they, as part of the exercise going into the budget, they actually inventoried all the parks and identified some. Is that what you were going to say? Identified.
Well, I mean, I would love to see that, though. Like, we didn't, like, as the budget committee, or
So that fed into what we put into the budget. So they advised, they gave us some recommendations, and part of that, like the Santiam, a lot of them were lower hanging fruit in terms of, like, things that Bob can do. So they're not doing the inspections and identifying we need a new slide here, we need new benches there. It was replacing some cracking walkways, the gazebo, getting rocks out of an area in Quail Run Park where there really maybe should better be some bark chips, things like that. So that was the list of things that they identified, and some of the bigger items were carried forward into the budget.
Luke?
So while I appreciate we're getting grants and we're expanding our parks, it appears like we're expanding parks that we have no ability to maintain. Is that, I'm going to say wise, because I'd call it other words, to expand a system that we can't maintain our current system? Why would we make it heavier, more cumbersome? Any money that we would spend on the budget to expand that is just going to put us further behind the 8 ball when it comes due.
Yeah, that's a great comment, and it's something that we actually talk about and think about, worry about. We have to be very mindful as we start adding things of what the maintenance costs are going to be. Even system development charges can't be used for replacing playground equipment. It can be used for new stuff, so being mindful of that. And we've talked a little bit about that with the levy to a small extent. I think I guess our thought is that for this first levy period, we're not going to have too much of Mill Creek Park to maintain. We're not going to have ball fields and all of those things, but certainly by the time we get to the next levy, that's going to be something that we really need to be talking about. Do you have anything you want to add, or either of you?
I'll add that I agree with what you're saying, 100%, that it is is in actual fact easy for local authorities. No, that's the wrong word, because easier is the right word. It's easier to get capital money than it ever is to get maintenance money. And unfortunately, we collectively have the perception that putting new shiny things in place is great for everybody. Ultimately, it actually costs us at the end of the day. Capital expenditure for an item is generally about 15 to 20% of the life cycle cost of an item, and therefore, we very seldom budget for the maintenance part of the installation at the time that we put the capital works in place, and therefore we're always behind the 8 ball. And I think we need to be mindful of that, and I think we need to have in place in our asset management programs a way that we identify those true maintenance cost requirements to give longevity to any asset that we put in or on the table.
And certainly the idea is going forward, especially with this position, that as we're adding capital assets, we have that understanding of what that ongoing maintenance cost is, so that we're making decisions based on not just the now, but the future.
Steve?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about Mill Creek Park. So I know we're spending $1.75 million, but it's a different pot of money. It's not something that can go in the general fund. It was $1 million grant, and then the other $750,000 was SDCs from some apartment complexes that went in. So it can't be spent anywhere else. It has to be a capital outlay for a new park or expansion. And same goes with Riverfront Park South. That was actually an ARPA grant from the county via federal funds. So that parking lot was not paid for by anything we could have spent out of the general fund.
I understand that. It just feels like we're being thrown a golden anchor while we're drowning.
Exactly.
And you let go of those. You don't hold on to them just because they're gold or you drowned.
Any other parks questions? Shall we move on to our favorite? Oh, I guess there's one more question.
One more question. I guess this might be a little bit in the wrong fund to discuss this, but for the SDCs, they are for development capital outlay, like how separate are they from the actual maintenance? Is it can we add new features to existing, or does it have to be just raw, brand new construction?
It can potentially be new. It has to be adding capacity. So if you're adding a gazebo, that could probably be SDC eligible. If you're adding amenities, that probably could be. But if you're replacing things, so if you're replacing a play structure, replacing a gazebo that's failing, then you can't.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Let's move on to our favorite topic.
Streets.
Streets.
So we have done a lot with streets, not as much as perhaps we would have hoped to last year. I want to highlight some of the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance things that happen kind of behind the scenes that people don't see. Our staff of 1.5 or maybe 1 cleaned 1,602 miles of streets over the past year. They used 22,000 pounds of asphalt cold mix to fix potholes, which, if you remember, once you've got a pothole, it's really just a Band-Aid that you kind of have to keep replacing, but we keep trying. We applied 4,700 gallons of dust control on gravel streets. We did complete the Ida Street paving and waterline improvement project in July. That was really kind of the year before, but we finished that in July. I said this because this will be true by the time we are finished with this fiscal year. Completed design and will begin construction of the West Town Drive from Shaft Road to Brett Court reconstruction or overlay project. This will improve the pavement condition as well as installing ADA access ramps at the intersections, and will likely include some intersection improvements at Westtown and Brett Court. Mr. Hayes, just so you know that. Slurry sealed Sierra Court and Heritage Loop and a portion of Westtown that's not included in the improvement project. We also received the Safe Routes to School grant, so we'll be, I guess that's the highlight. We received the grant. The highlight for this coming biennium is that we'll actually construct it. So let's move on to the next 25, 27, we'll obviously continue street sweeping, pothole repairs, those types of things. We will perform street reconstruction, pavement overlays, and slurry seals on selected streets in Stayton. We haven't specifically listed the streets because that's something that we're going to bring to council. We've got some criteria that play into that, and we're going to present those and have council ultimately say, we've got, I think, 5 options, and we haven't had a chance to touch base while Barry was gone, but we'll have that coming to council probably in the near future. But as part of that, the budget would be investing $1.2 million in street overlay projects and $600,000 in slurry seal and crack seal projects. We would also be doing the design and construction of the pedestrian crossing at 3rd and Fern Ridge. We would be designing Kindle Way and another reconstruction project. And then this fund would also benefit from a quarter additional FTE with the new position that would be added with the park levy passing, which would have the half-time parks, quarter streets, and quarter water operations. Yeah. That's the highlights.
Questions? Mr. Luke, looks like your card is up.
I'm assuming the street overlays are not going to encroach into areas where we're going to have to do underground work also?
Yeah, that is very much part of the criteria that they'll be looking at. It will either be areas where we are also doing a water project, or it will not have anything that we need to upgrade. Twice, yeah, do twice.
Thank you.
Yes.
Steve?
So I know we're spending quite a bit on streets, and that's great. But I got to ask about reconstruction. I know you're putting together a plan for reconstruction, I think it was, or design and street reconstruction. So we're not looking at doing any reconstruction during this 2 years, or?
So not formal reconstruction. It will be overlays. I believe that's what we discussed.
I have to hit it. There will be, as we've discussed and put out recently, there are several streets that are in bad condition, and they are literally falling to pieces and have major potholes in them that fill up with water. We will be. I was trying to avoid that word.
Yes, there are.
And so what we are doing, we've identified, I believe, 5 streets as it stands right now, that we will in actual fact go in and reconstruct them to the extent that they will be brought back to a gravel road, as opposed to a sealed road at this point in time. And it's part of the cost-saving exercise that we're doing, and we can in actual fact get it back to an operational street that doesn't have major potholes in it and be able to maintain that in a relatively good state. Full reconstruction of roads at this point in time, we have not identified streets that would undergo that type of work. So it is more getting things back into getting it away from having a problem that is happening every time it rains is the type of work that we're approaching. I know this is not a satisfactory answer. I know that it's not the best thing as far as visibility is concerned, but it does enhance to the best ability for the money that we have available. I'll emphasise again, as I have on and on in this meeting, that we have a roads capital value as it stands right now, a replacement value of about 241 million. I have a nice real number in this one. I must have done some evaluation on this. And in actual fact, I got these numbers off the PCI evaluation work that was done 3 years ago. And there is about $82 million worth of that. So in other words, 34% of that capital outlay streets within the city are in failed or poor condition. I don't believe that we have 82 million to go out and fix those and bring them back into good conditions as it stands today. So with the money that we have available, the money that we're utilising to formulate a balanced budget, we are restoring the streets, the worst streets as it stands right now, back into a tenable, functional street, be it gravel.
And, I mean, so that is true. We are reconstructing some of those worst streets. We also have money for doing overlay projects, and
Yes.
there are, and I don't have them in front of me. I know like some of the options include like Hollister, Locust. I can't remember some of the other streets, but that's the condition that we're talking about, trying to do an overlay and
Right.
fix those streets. So
You can't do the very poor streets, I don't think,
exactly,
with the
and so we're
overlay.
doing streets that will
Correct.
be a noticeable difference, but aren't complete reconstructions. And then again, we're also allocating a lot of money to the slurry seal, crack seal, trying to maintain those good streets
Yeah.
so they don't get worse, and so trying to do that balance.
If we look at streets, there's a constructed plan or planned maintenance program for streets, which includes crack sealing, slurry seals, re-crack sealing, re-maintaining, and then rebuilding. It's a 5-step process. And if we can keep that 5-step process up, we maintain the street for its maximum expected life, which is about 30 years for a sealed street. If we don't do that work, then we deteriorate, or what we call mine the asset, and the failure on the street actually occurs earlier or quicker than we would anticipate. So what we're doing, or trying to maximise, is hold the streets that we can in reasonably good operational order to extend the life or maximise the life out of the streets that we can. The ones that have actually failed at the moment, we're in actual fact are taking those backwards, and I'll use the word backwards, to put them back into gravel streets so that they actually become functional and you don't have the massive problem that we've had in this past year with the deteriorated streets to the extent that we do have, and I'm going to use the word, Mr. Mayor,
I won't say the lake.
yeah, we won't use that word. But we have that problem, and we are going to try and solve that problem in the worst streets by taking it to a different serviceability and level.
I understand. How long has it been since we've done a street reconstruction? I mean, I know you're,
Ida Street. So,
Ida Street.
I mean, and we'll be doing West Town. So those are,
So those are reconstructed?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I thought those were okay. I didn't realize they were reconstruction.
Ida Street was a partial reconstruction and a partial overlay, is my understanding.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Jordan, did you have a question?
I did. I can't find the page that it's on. It's driving me crazy. Okay, so it's the question that I asked you, Julia. So on one page in the beginning, it said that there was going to be a transfer of like $304,000 to the street fund, and then it got changed to like
Yeah, James can explain that difference.
288.
Yeah, I think
That
you're
was it.
referring to, I think it's page 3 in Julia's budget message. And that 304,000 was not the amount of the transfer. This was the amount of cuts that we initially made to the general fund so that we had enough money to make that 287,000 transfer to the street fund a budgeted reality. So the 304,000 was a list of cuts that management originally had come up with off the top
okay.
when we first created our budget and we needed to start trimming things.
Gotcha. Okay. And then my next question for the street fund, I know that we have belabored the point that we understand we cannot do reconstruction of all of our streets. But we've also talked about, like, we have that list of the streets that we want to, like, of all the streets, what can we do? But we also have talked about, we know we have really bad streets. Take 6th Street, for example. So what is it going to take? Like, if we want to do 6th Street, what is it going to take to fix 6th Street? Like that, we have never answered that question. We don't even know what it's going to take to fix something like 6th Street. So we can't even begin, like when you're talking about like getting a ballpark number for the sound, you know, the estimate for the sound system in this room, like we don't even know what a ballpark figure is going to be to even like reconstruct that road, to even get an idea of how much money we need to come up with.
So we do have that, and we've shared that.
No, but okay, even if I'm not even talking about the road. I'm talking about, because we talk about just the road, and you're like, oh, but we need everything underneath, and that's what I've asked for. And then we're like, oh, but you're like, oh, but that's not everything, and that's what we want. It's like, what is it going to take to fix the entire issue of this 6th Street and make it right?
So
that's what we want.
And to a certain extent, I think the asset manager planner may be able to help with that. That's a lot of work in and of itself. That's essentially, I mean, you could do potentially a very high-level ballpark, but that's a design. Yeah, I mean, we're working on, what's that?
It's 4 master plans.
Well, right, it's combining master plan, you know, the 4 different master plans, but it's essentially designing that for every street that you want us to do. That's a lot of work. We can certainly give a ballpark, high-level information for 6th Street, but there's a lot involved in that. Barry, do you want to add or?
I'm going to reiterate that at the moment there is information for the individual pieces. There is a lack of combined information, and it's very fair to ask the question that, you know, what is the answer if we put all these things together? At the moment, I cannot answer that question for you. And we don't have that collectively put into a rational program that enables anybody to answer that question. As Julia has just explained, there is a lot of work to be done to in actual fact get to that point so that we understand that full answer. And I'm hoping that you guys will approve to have an asset manager in place that will be totally focused on getting the master plans up to date. We have master plans that are now significantly out of date, and therefore they can't be used to fill this information. And we have no condition assessments associated with those asset management, with those master plans. We need the condition assessments undertaken, evaluated, and incorporated. Again, the asset manager will be responsible for doing that, collecting that information together, and giving you a real answer. My true hope is that over the next 18 months, if we can get an asset manager in place, we would be able to give you these answers for the next time that we sit down to do this exercise. It's not something I can give you overnight. And I appreciate that you may have been asking for it for a long time, and I appreciate that everybody understands that this is an issue. We just don't have the tools at our fingertips, or the personnel at our fingertips, or have spent the money on master plans. As I can register here, we have about $4 million worth of outstanding master plans to do right now. So once they are done, then we can answer those questions formally.
Okay. Go ahead and ask your question.
Luke?
how long does a master plan remain viable?
Really good question. Okay, to get to the point that we're actually doing doing a budget, a master plan should be undertaken so that it's a viable document for a 20 to a 50-year period. It should be updated every 5 years. Okay, so every 5 years is the lifespan of a master plan. And then within that, so to get to the point that we have a master plan, we then have a CIP that falls out of the back of a master plan, and that's basically a yearly indication that should be updated every year. And ours will be every 2 years now because we're going to a 2-year budgeting cycle. Therefore, it will be a 6-year plan rather than a 5-year plan. And then from that, it falls out to a preliminary budget, and then it goes to a formal budget. Now, saying that, as it stands right now by law, we are generating a balanced budget. A balanced budget is not fixing or identifying or, in actual fact, working towards formulating or fixing any of the problems that I identified yesterday or anything that I've got on this list. Basically, it is meeting a statutory requirement that your budget is balanced and you have the money available to do the work that you say you're going to do. So it is a thing fixing, it's not fixing, it is formulating it's utilising an available capital amount of money or maintenance amount of money. It is not, in actual fact, identifying or working towards asset longevity.
One more question. Do we have any viable master plans of the 4 water, wastewater? One.
We have one up-to-date master plan as it stands right now. And in actual fact, it runs out this year.
Which one is that?
It's the wastewater one. Wastewater was done in 2021.
And we are currently working on the stormwater master plan, so that will be up to date.
And that's probably about 18 months to a year out of date, away from completion.
Yeah. I just asked because, like Jordan just whispered us, that we've been working on them every year for...
Well, that is in actual fact true.
Competent management.
A master plan takes, it's ridiculous. That was a bad word, wasn't it, Barry?
I'm okay with it.
It is ridiculous how long it takes to undertake and perform and put in place a master plan. And again, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but that is why I believe that you truly need one dedicated person responsible for the planning of the assets and the infrastructure. When you're utilising 2 people to formulate everything that you do in the organisation, it just doesn't work.
Thank you.
And I'll do a pitch. I know that Barry's a little negative right now. I'll be they're not complete garbage. You know, they are informative. And we have, so for example, with sanitary sewer, we know that is out of date. We do a lot of working with our consultants to analyze things sort of outside of the master plan process. So we're not completely helpless. It's just we could do much better, much smarter with these updated plans and this coordination.
Jordan, is your card up again?
It is. Okay, I see it says design of Kendall Way. We do not have a design of Kendall Way?
It has not been designed. There's a conceptual, you know what the road width is going to be, but as far as designing a road that identifies the utilities, the cross-section width, all of the details. So that has to be done before you can construct a project.
So that does not include putting in Kendall Way? It's not designing and
not within this
constructing.
biennial budget, in part because we don't want to build it while we're building Mill Creek Park, while we're building ASR project and having heavy vehicles go over a freshly constructed street.
Okay. A follow-up to that, when it is constructed, is it going to have sidewalks and...
I believe it could and should. This would be eligible for system development
Street
charge
lights
dollars
and everything
as
on
well,
it.
so it should be a fully constructed street.
Okay. Hold on.
Go ahead, Mr. Hayes.
My question, Barry, is very simple. Has nothing to do with the money. Just I wanted to make sure nothing has changed since last year's budget committee, of my understanding. When it comes to reconstructing a street, okay, there will be a survey and there will be a design, okay? Then when they actually do the work, well, basically everything is taken out, the whole street, re-gravelled, okay, and also brand spanking new sidewalks, whether they're there or not, and ADA corners per state of Oregon mandate. Okay.
If it's a full reconstruction of the street, I would expect exactly what you're saying, that it's a sub-base, it's a dig out down to the sub-base, a renewal of the sub-base, a reconstruction of the running surface, an installation of curb and channels, an installation of footpaths and walkways if they're required or in actual fact agreed to be installed, and all the ADA requirements, state and federal, are adhered to when that is done.
Okay. Just the reason I brought it up is I have actually talked with people in areas, especially on 6th Street between Washington and Marion.
Right.
They don't want all that. Okay. And I'm trying to explain to them you can't get around it, but they just don't understand why they just can't take the road out and repave it just to make it that safe.
Okay.
You know, and I tell them, no, we got to follow.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to answer the question and make it a subtly different statement to what I thought you were asking. If we decide to, in actual fact, just do a fix reconstruction as opposed to a reconstruction and rebuild of the street, then we can basically do what we like. If on 6th Street there. Yes, it is 6th Street. There is an issue that we have a deformed road profile as it stands today. And I'm going to illustrate it this way. A street should have a pitch or a tent profile that has the peak in the centre of the street. What has happened over the time with that particular street, it's gone the other way. And we now have all the drainage running to the centre of the street. So every time it rains, the water runs to the centre of the street and we form puddles, which exasperates and destroys the street itself. So therefore, to fix that, we're going to actually dig that out and reconstruct it back the other way with drainage running off the street and down the sides of the road. Now, will we put in curb and channel with this reconstruction that I've just described for the lesser streets that we're going to do? Probably not. We're probably not going to put curb and channel, we're probably not going to put footpaths, we're probably not going to meet ADA requirements on the corners because there's not going to be those features in those streets. We are just going to make it a functional street that doesn't have this profile that effectively removes Lake Quigley from the centre of the street. Okay?
And just to be clear, that will be gravel, so it will be reconstructed and maintained as gravel, but because of the reconfiguration, it will be easier to maintain, and there will be more effort and emphasis. One of the things that's been discussed is more of that gravel work on a more regular basis than had been being done in the recent past.
Yeah, because my problem last year was it just felt like who was here before made it very clear this is the one and only way you reconstruct. Now I'm being told something completely different here. So I'm like, okay, so the cost can come down a little bit on a decent reconstruction.
Well, it's not.
I want to clarify that we are talking two different things here. Okay, if we're talking about and I'm going to reinforce, and I'm going to use his name. Lance was correct in saying that a road in a reconstruction that is federally funded and federally mandated needs to be done and built a certain way. And it needs to meet both the state requirements, the city requirements, and the federal requirements, depending on where the funds are coming from. If we're doing a maintenance exercise, which is what I'm calling this current road reconstruction for 5th, 6th, and there's one other, I can't remember. There's 5 streets in total anyway that are on that list, that we will do what we think is the best thing to do to make the street functional today. We will not meet federal or state requirements in the terms of getting funds to do that work.
And it won't be paved. I guess I just want to make sure that it's not a road reconstruction.
In terms of
Yeah.
a paved road.
So our notes say it would be 5th, 6th, and High Street.
Right, that was the one, thank you.
Brian, I'm going to let you go
Does that answer
next.
the question? So,
Yeah, that pretty much answered it. It's just, I just want to make sure that, like anybody, you don't want the federal government coming down on us or the state, because that's all we could afford to do.
right, no.
Okay, okay, all right.
If we're not using their money, they won't impose or tell us what to do. Okay.
Brian.
I was
In the
gonna,
microphone.
I was going to try to highlight what Barry was saying. So in the term of reconstruct, it's taking it all the way down and building it all the way up to a brand-new street. All we're doing here is repurposing, refunctioning it to where it was functional street, to whatever the origination of it was back in the day. That's what we're doing.
Jordan.
Okay, I do have another question. Okay, so from our 2025 budget, we have in unappropriated funds 1.1 million, and then in the proposed budget biennium, we have money taken out of there, out of unappropriated, and put it into contingency. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's also being spent within
Is
the
it being-
biennium. We're going from spending $3 million in 24-25 to $11 million, so $5 million. So we're spending quite a bit more per year in the upcoming biennium as
But that
well.
also includes some grants, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah,
That makes it muddy.
yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that money is being spent on actual roads.
It's being spent on roads and road maintenance. So that's the slurry seal, crack seal. James is going to chime in here.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out the capital outlay section on the next page, 65, shows the 7.8 million in capital projects. Most of that is roads. There's some vehicle upfitting there, and design of a road, but the rest is for roads.
All right. Are we ready to move beyond streets? Okay. Now, maybe, oh no, this isn't Leonard's question yet, but water. So highlights for 24-25. Big news that we were working on and working through was the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers proposal to do a deep drawdown of the Detroit Dam. We also have just barely started the design of Phase 1 aquifer storage and recovery system, in that we got through some state analysis and are starting to move to that next stage of actually working on the project, as well as we will be doing a water line in Shaft Road. That's part of that project to do some looping to the actual ASR. Installed a new 8-inch water line and new water services on Douglas Avenue, installed a 10-inch water line and new water services on Ida, completed the construction of the water line on Ida and abandoned some water lines as part of that. I mentioned the water line on Shaft Road as part of the ASR project, rebuilt some pumps at the water treatment plant, and finished installing security fencing around the Regis water tank property. And then going forward, beating a drum now, increased focus on asset management planning for deferred maintenance and replacement costs. We will continue to monitor and participate, respond as needed with ongoing discussions related to the Detroit Dam drawdown. We're going to continue with the design and hopefully begin construction of the ASR project, update the water master plan, including asset management planning. We've got some capital projects that, if you ask details, I'll defer to Barry, but at Water Valve and Pine Street VFD project, I already mentioned the water master plan, and then this also includes a quarter FTE for the operations component of the water. It's basically helping to fix leaks, do repairs, those types of things. Questions on water? My goodness, there's a dog out there.
I'll quickly clarify the VFD thing because it's gobbledygook. It's actually a couple of valves up at the reservoir that currently are operated on a almost manual basis for the firefighting system, and we're going to put slow electronic controllers on those valves so that they can operate more easily and simpler in the day-to-day operation of the works. So it was just a clarification on the water valves.
Questions on water? Brian, you go first, please.
Let me start off by acknowledging and thanking Barry for his help with Detroit. I think it was instrumental to have you there and have you help us navigate through that. My only comment is that it's a postponement. It's not a dismissal. So we are going to face this within this budget cycle. And I guess I would just ask, what are we going to do to try to mitigate that and try to anticipate that? And where does that factor into the budget?
So I'll start and then Barry can chime in. We purposely didn't budget for it because, one, we don't have the money to budget for it. And we will have to find a mitigation, and that mitigation will have to include outside funding. And so when and or if that happens, we'll have to do a budget amendment to do that because we just don't have the resources and it's to deal with it on our own. And that's part of the message to those that are making the decisions. Barry, do you want to add on as far as what other things that we're doing?
Well, currently we are discussing with the other agencies that are impacted here on what they are going to do and what we can jointly do to, in actual fact, undertake mitigation exercises to, in actual fact, reduce the possibility. I truly believe that it is going to happen, as you've said, Brian, that this is just a delay. It's not a stop. So we are going to have something in place to, in actual fact, solve the issue. There are technical things that we can do to reduce the impact of the high turbidity water. We know that historical water treatment processes work better than new water treatment processes. And we can illustrate that by looking at the South Sandiam River and seeing that the oldest water treatment plant on the South Sandiam River, which is a conventional filter clarifier system, in actual fact, it handled the situation to the extent that they could still produce potable water. The newer system, in actual fact, reduced its life capacity by something like 60%, and they lost their warranty on the new system. On the middle range system, which is the Trident system at Sweet Home, they actually lost one complete filter bank when they went in backwashing due to pinning in the filters, blocking in the filters, and high pressures caused by that blocking. So we are talking to the vendors of water treatment equipment. One of the water vendors that I'm talking to has experience in this very issue on the East Coast, where they actually did scouring on the East Coast, and we're looking at what sort of water treatment processes they put in place to, in actual fact, enhance the ability to handle the dirty water. Now, as Julia said, this does not come free. We are probably looking at somewhere in the order of $15 to $20 million worth of capital expenditure, which is way outside anything that we've got capable of looking at inside this budget. We will have to look for other funds. We may be able to look at, and that's one of the mitigation options that we can look at. There are others that we are currently going down the road of looking at as well, but we haven't finalised anything as it stands today. I'm in this meeting going to personally thank the Army Corps for deferring and stopping this year's exercise. Even though it was a legal issue that basically stopped them, I think it's given us a little bbit of a breather room to actually come up with a formal answer on how we can solve the problem for ourselves.
Jonathan?
I two questions. About the Detroit drawdown, I have not been here for. Thank you. I guess I have two questions. I have not been here for the prior Detroit drawdown discussion, so could you just do a short recap of how that would be affecting the water system? I know that it's that.
No, he can't.
Not short.
He cannot.
Well, that's why he was looking to me to say me do it, because it's not short, but he certainly wouldn't be able to do
Muddy
it
water.
short.
Bad.
Okay, so so basically when they are draining the lake, that will make muddy water that'll clog up our system?
Exactly. There you
Okay,
go.
that's what I
Yeah,
needed to know.
very muddy water.
No water for us, Salem, bad.
And I encourage you, we have some information on our website.
Okay.
I encourage you, see, Barry, it can be done.
I was just going to congratulate Jordan on her shortness of brevity and ability to be
So-
succinct.
Turbidity.
There you go.
And I guess my other question would be, would this be like, a week or two while they're doing it, or is this a months long?
So, I encourage you to look at the website, because we have a lot of information.
Just
Yeah,
annihilation.
Okay.
yeah. There you go. Muddy water annihilation, months with no water, 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's really bad, Jonathan.
Okay. I will go do some more fun reading. After the meeting.
Yeah, we will happily talk to you about it in
Okay.
more detail, but
Okay.
it took like an entire multiple work sessions to talk
Okay,
about it,
okay.
so it's.
So
more- yeah.
I did miss some stuff. So I will go do my own reading and catch up on that.
But the cliff notes, muddy water annihilation.
Okay.
That's-
Okay.
Bad.
Sorry I brought it up.
Okay. The aquifer storage recharge. Could you remind me? I know you talked about that last year. What is that? Why are we doing it?
Yeah, essentially, it's supposed to be a secondary water source that essentially it's like a really big water tank. So it takes the water off of the creek or the stream, the river. Sanium. Where's Sanium? Takes it off of the river, puts it into a storage area underground where it can basically stay, and then that
I'm going to take over.
Muddy water, bad.
Clean water, good.
It is taking our potable water that we produce through our water treatment plant, injecting it into the ground, forcing the existing water that's underground away from that source, and then being able to pump it back out once that storage is recovered. So aquifer, big hole in the ground, storage, our water into the ground, recovery, our water back out of the ground. And it's done in a confined aquifer so that we are looking at effectively an underground reservoir that we're putting water into, that it will give us something like about 3 months worth of storage of water.
So that will give us water, before all this other stuff, that would give us water for when the water was really muddy, in the river, or if there was,
Yes, but not enough. The problem
Right,
is,
before all this, that was the vision.
So it's like
A backup.
it's like a backup system
Yes.
for just when
Right.
the river
If
gets thick.
if the river is super low, or it gives us another option so that we're not
Okay.
just having to ration water. But again, that was sort of before the Detroit Dam drawdown discussions, and that changed things quite a bit. But we still have the money to do the ASR project, and it's an important project, and it would certainly help us with some things, but not enough to mitigate what
yeah,
could come.
it's about 15% recovery capability of our demand at any given point in time.
I'm going to jump in line, if it's okay. I'm going to take a quote off a movie from the 80s or 90s. Why me? Why me? I understand about the fish, Corps of Engineers, but if they do this to us, because we've all read about what happened down in Sweet Home in Lebanon, how or why can they possibly do the drawdown and cause our water system to be all boogered up, and then we have to fix it?
Well, that's the question we're trying to ask. And again, that's probably way more than we have time to talk about in this meeting. And that's part of the debate. We've said we shouldn't have to pay for this. So, and we've been, writing letters and getting, our congresswomen and our senators aware. We've been talking with representatives at, the governor's office. We've been trying to sort of do this at the political level too, of this is going to be a significant impact, and we shouldn't have to bear the cost of that. That's sort of part of our message.
Okay.
There is any good news, it's the fact that Salem is in it with us.
Yeah.
And they're far less likely to do something to Salem than they were Sweet Home.
Luke.
First question, regarding the new position, that is the asset management position? No.
No, that's the position that would be created with the park levy passing, that would go half to parks, a quarter to water, and a quarter to streets.
And is that one person filling that role, and they're going to be qualified to do all three jobs?
That's the vision, yes.
Okay.
And that's how we currently have, we have guys there now that can sort of do a little bit of all those things.
Okay. Second question, there's no way to double the size of the ASR project to facilitate this?
I don't think so. I think it's been pretty well vetted for the size that it is, but okay, there you go. No.
I asked that tongue-in-cheek, knowing it's probably not. Thank you.
Jonathan, is your card up again? No. No, it's not. Let's have some more cards up. No more cards up? Julia?
Okay, now moving on to wastewater. I have a feeling we'll get a question from Mr. Hayes. So highlights from 24-25. Again, and I said this last night too, and I think I've said this, tonight. We have very good people throughout the city, but Public Works, very much so, where they're very frugal, thoughtful, creative, and find ways to save us money. So I just want to say that. So some of the highlights of this current year, they installed some fall protection at some of the pumps so they don't fall in and can't get out. One of the big things, which was really exciting, was that they purchased a TV inspection van and smoke tester that enables the city to clean our own pipes, do some video inspections and smoke testing. That eliminates the need for outside contractors. That budget was $400,000 last year. That doesn't mean that they spent that much, but the budget was that much. So that money is being saved, and already they're being able to find it quickly and immediately issues, but also illegal connections. So we're able to get people paying for their bills that they should be paying for because they're connected to our system. So it's really, it's a great, exciting project and saving us money and then giving us some great tools. They're also purchasing or have purchased a lift that will allow maintenance on their building roofs, gutters, silos, which can also be used for things like lights, tree trimming, pressure washing, things like that. Another really cool and exciting thing that they did, the system had a water recycle component that hadn't been used. From what I understand, it's sort of like nobody really taught them back in the day how to use it, and it hadn't been used. So the plant was using about 170,000 gallons of potable water a day. And through this recycling, they have cut it down to less than 1,000 gallons a day. That's a huge savings. And in part, one of the reasons why they really were focusing on that is with the drawdown, and if we were having to have water limitations, they wanted to make sure that they weren't pulling water from us and our needs. So again, a huge, amazing effort that they just sort of took the initiative to do. They've also done some treatment plant, what's that? Oh, they also did some plant roof replacements on the headworks, and from a some more capital side, we completed the construction of the Phase 2 Ida Street sanitary sewer 30-inch trunk line. So looking forward, this is continued, sorry. And I don't,
Not done yet.
I'm like, I don't remember having this go on 2 slides when I put this together. And we also updated the agreement with the City of Sublimity for our new wastewater contract. That was based on the utility rate study, so they're now paying their fair share, so that's great, and we've had a wonderful working relationship and partnership with them. And we have signed the contract and are beginning design of the sort of the next phase of the Ida Street project. Sorry, everybody. It will get off Ida Street really quickly, but so that's the Priority 2.4 Master Plan project that we received $3 million in state funding to construct. Now, highlights, looking forward. Again, increased focus on asset management and planning for deferred maintenance and replacement costs. We expect to complete design and begin construction of that Master Plan 2.4 project. We also plan to design and maybe start constructing, depending on the timeline, of 2 other of our Master Plan projects. Post-SBR state equalization, I'll let Barry explain that in a second. We also hope to do a project. These are all very complicated. I should probably turn this over to you, Barry. Do you want to explain the last 3, the bullets, the post? Yeah, thank you, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I saw that look, Jordan. The post SBR equalisation basin is a basin that was constructed for exactly as the words say, to equalise flows to the SBRs, the sequenced batched reactors. And that basin, in actual fact, does not work. It hasn't been functional since the day it was put into service. We are looking at repurposing that basin for storage possibilities, and and other possibilities. I am going to say that even though we've got it in this budget, there is a possibility that we will do other work. In other words, add a third SBR to the wastewater treatment plant rather than, in actual fact, play around with the equalisation basin in this period. The Mill Creek force main is the renewal of a force main coming from as part of the sublimity supply, transfer of water to the wastewater treatment plant. It's an enlargement of the existing and replacement of an existing force main. So pumping main, pump station and associated water main. Implementation of the lateral.
I can respond to that one. So that one is essentially we want to provide an assistance program to property owners to help them fix their I&I, their inflow and infiltration. While it is the property owner's responsibility, the impact to our system and our treatment plant is extensive. And so if we can give them some help in fixing their problems, that will benefit us in the long run and save us as a community money in the long run by investing in assistance to people to fix their pipes.
I'm going to add to this. Yesterday, I think I highlighted to you that our peaking factor takes us up about 4 times our base flow. So our base flow is about 1.5 million gallons a day going to the wastewater treatment plant. We get to about 4.5 million gallons a day during the peak winter time. This assistance program is aimed at reducing that peaking number so that we don't in actual fact have to enlarge our wastewater treatment plant in a shorter period. So we're trying to provide longevity to the wastewater treatment plant, which is obviously our most expensive and highest valued asset in our whole organisation. And I said that purposefully because yesterday I told you it was $340 million. In actual fact, I'm looking at my notes in front of me. It's actually $300 million, and the asset decayed value is about $69 million as it stands today. Mr. Hayes asked a question about the electrical work associated with the wastewater treatment plant. It's inside that $69 million. As the Mayor said yesterday, we are looking at getting assistance to undertake that work. It is not currently listed in the budget itself, and it's about a $4 million or it is, it is listed in the budget. I think we've got it listed at $3 million, have we? Yeah, the actual number's probably closer, as it stands right now, to about $4.3 million. So, you know, we're already short in that number, if that's real. An explanation of the electrical work, I think you were asking for, Mr. Hayes? Yes?
Okay, so I'm seeing the $3 million for the electrical upgrades. That's what we're saying.
Yes.
You're saying it's closer to 4.3.
It's probably closer to 4.3.
Oh, okay. And there's nothing here we can try to find another 1.5 for?
We will massage.
Well, I'm looking at the
I
list.
guess I want to, this is a great opportunity to say, this capital outlay is really aspirational, and it's based on the system development charges coming in as projected, which I've told James, highly unlikely that we're going to actually get that much in system development charges over this budget period. If we do, we have the budget authority to do these projects. We probably will not do all of these projects. We will also look for grants to do these. So we did ask the state for contribution for the electrical upgrades. We have federal earmarks potentially for the Mill Creek force main, as well, I think for the SBRs. So we very well may get funding to do these through some sources or another. But it is unlikely that we will actually have the money to do all of these things, but we want to have the ability to do them if the money comes.
just from what I understand, when it comes to the electrical, that's pretty dire when it comes to a wastewater plant. Okay, and not to sound cocky or anything, but my brother, wastewater treatment specialist 4, okay, and worked for the city of Eugene. Yes, I know that's much huger than here, but when it comes to wastewater, electrical's everything. Okay, it has to work, you need it to work, you got to have a backup to make it work. Okay, it's just that important. So I got kind of, he's visiting from Montana currently, and I actually asked him about that, and he says, oh, my Lord, and I'm like, yeah, okay. So he just, nothing really nasty to say to anybody, just don't brush it under the rug. Get it done, please. So, if the $3 million's not going to cut it, well, okay, we got to find out how to make it cut. Okay, I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I will emphasise your point in saying that we have to get it done.
Yeah.
And there are phases that we can phase the electrical work. That's a bad term, isn't it? Because we're talking about phased power and phasing the work. But we can, in actual fact, phase the work itself. And the $3 million would go a long way to, in actual fact, replacing what I talked about yesterday, the jetpack electrical work, which is 1990 equipment. 1970 equipment. Good God, I can't even say it right. And that equipment, we cannot alter the programming to it. It is basically fixed, and we need to be able to get something that's a little bit more up to date. So we can phase the work, and we will phase the work utilising the funds that are available, and we'll move forward to an actual fact maximise that replacement work as best as we obviously can. Because, yes, I agree with you. If the wastewater treatment plant falls over, we've got nowhere to put our waste. It'll go straight out untreated, and we'll be under major fining. So it's very important.
I'm giving you guys the floor. Are you still discussing?
Well, it looks like we have another question.
I just want to make sure
I
that
think we're good, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go to Mr. Patty.
Oh.
Thank you, Budget Chair. Yeah, I have 2 questions, and thank you for this presentation on the wastewater portion here. My first question is administrative and policy in nature, so I'll be addressing Julia. If you need to tag in Barry, that's fine too. As far, and if we could turn back, we don't have to, but just turning back for your reference to the highlights, and you referenced the TV inspection van and the smoke tester. In earlier iterations of purchasing the equipment, I remember us discussing, potentially even renting that out to other jurisdictions that may need it. And I'm just wondering where we're at in doing that as far as from the perspective of recapturing some of the revenues spent on that equipment and getting them back.
So we're not there yet. I think that they are just getting it up and going and getting comfortable with it themselves. I think that's certainly on the horizon, but they haven't done that yet. Barry, I don't know if you have anything to add. You've just been back a few days, so you may not have any updates.
Well, I know that the personnel have been out and operating and utilising the equipment, and they are ecstatic with what they've been able to purchase. They actually purchased a second-hand van, but we have the new and latest TV equipment and transportation equipment inside that van. The experience that they have to date is, as Julia said earlier, we're finding things that we didn't know we even had problems with the equipment that we've got. And the guys' experience is growing on a day-to-day basis as they take the thing out. I'm of the mind that we should not be taking out and trying to hire the van out until we are very comfortable inside our own system. And once we've done that, then don't hesitate. We'll be out there selling it to our best ability.
Thank you, Barry. And then my second question to you is more of a clarification, technical. And I was just kind of doing some math based on figures for wastewater treated this year. And so I'd turn your attention to the point about the 170,000 gallons of potable water that we were mistakenly treating. I just want to understand, do I have it right or wrong? Is that about 10% of the water we were treating a day we were doing incorrectly? We didn't need to do that? Do I have that right?
We weren't treated, do you want to explain?
Okay. You are actually, he is actually correct in what he's saying, in that we were treating it at our water treatment plant, not our wastewater treatment plant. So we were treating water out of the Santiam River and sending it to our wastewater treatment plant for processed water inside the wastewater treatment plant. So you are correct that we were, I'm not going to say incorrectly operating or treating, because the amount of water that goes through and gets treated and passes to the distribution system is relatively consistent anyway. Producing an extra 170,000 gallons a day is not that much more expensive than producing it without producing the same amount of water without that element. What it does do is, at the water treatment plant, the expense of buying that water is no longer an expense to the wastewater treatment plant. There's a counter to that, of course, that the income is not received for the water department. So it's a catch-22 situation a little bit, and that was, before I looked at it with the guys, that was one of the answers that was coming out, that, okay, it's just a roundabout anyway. We either produce it and pay for it, or we produce it and don't pay for it. The water system that we are now using is recycled water from the back end of the filters at the wastewater treatment plant as opposed to the water treatment plant. Have I confused you totally, Pat?
No, I think I understand it better now. Thank you for explaining it to me. I just wanted to see, how long. Well, I guess I'm trying to understand the totality of the loss from not knowing to do that for 12 years.
Yeah, I don't call it. I'm not calling it a loss, because it is. Am I allowed to use the word money go round?
Yeah, I don't think. It was just. It's not environmentally sound, I guess. We were using treated water that we didn't need to use, that could have been stored and used somewhere else. So it wasn't lost money. I don't think it was lost revenue per se. It was just a smarter use of the facility's capability.
Yes.
And in terms of the payment of the water bill, we just started charging it, I think, last year. So we haven't been doing that for 12 years. And the monthly impact of that bill, it cut it in half. So in March, the normal bill had been $10,800. In April, it was $5,400. So that was 1 month's difference. And it is paying from city to city, from one fund to the other.
Thank you, David. Let's see. Let's go. Luke.
First of all, I want to say thank you for finally buying the vacuum or the TV I&I truck. I've been looking at the numbers, and it's like, if it costs 50% more to buy it than it does to rent it, let's just buy it. We should have done that. Well, we brought it up, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, and have been kicking it down the curb, or kicking it down the line every year. And it's like, that's, as a business owner, that's just hard to justify, watching that much money go out when we can not. So thank you for getting that done. And regarding the I&I that you're noticing, and the program for doing the laterals to the houses, how can I know what kind of I&I I'm producing, to know if I need to facilitate fixing that?
So I'm not sure if it's completely thought out yet. Barry might have something to add, but the new truck that we have will also help identify some of that. What's that?
Send it over to Luke's house.
Yeah, right. Barry, do you?
I volunteer to be a
Guinea pig.
guinea pig.
I think they can see when they have extensive amounts of I&I coming down the pipes, so they know when it's.
There's two answers to the question, in actual fact. The first one is, as pointed out in the bullet point up there, we have got both the truck that puts a TV camera inside the pipe, and we look at the pipe itself, the laterals, and the construct of the pipe. It is obvious when you go past if it's wet, if it's in the wet, if it's not even in the wet and we're below water table level, we get water coming out either down the lateral, around the joint, or into joints on the pipe, and they can be picked up by the camera itself. The actual test that is used to determine whether you personally have a problem with your lateral is that we do a smoke test. So we actually push smoke into and down the manholes, out through the laterals, and it comes out either in your joints, it comes out of the ground. It's actually quite interesting that smoke will, if you've got a failed joint or a broken pipe, the smoke will make its way up through the soil, and you can see it as a spot in the soil. So it locates the break and the lateral damage as well. It also comes out your vent pipe on your roof. So we can drive down the street, we see the smoke coming out of the pipe. Lots of people, unless we notify them, I have been in occasions where the fire brigade has been called because people thought the houses were on fire, which is a little bit of a problem. But anyway.
We'll do better communication.
Yes, yeah. I didn't do good communication, let's put it that way. So the smoke test is really the thing that, for an individual, gives you an indication of a broken or a bad lateral. TVing really gives us the indication inside our pipe and catchment system of how bad it is.
So basically, if I have an I&I problem in my lateral, I'll be receiving a letter from the city saying,
Correct.
hey, we'd like you to fix this, we'd like to offer a grant to...
That's correct. Yeah, we will identify it, we'll tell you, and hopefully you'll join our program.
Follow-up question. How long will it take to get that all completed?
We do about 20% of our total sewer length, and our total sewer length is about 54 miles of pipe in the ground as it stands. And so we do about 20% of that each year. So we're doing about 10 miles a year.
Okay.
And therefore it's roughly about 5 years to do the whole city.
Okay, thank you.
So, so I guess depending on where you are and where the program starts.
I just figure that if I know what the total length is, and so in 5 years we should see a massive reduction in our I&I. Well,
A massive identification. It's getting the people to fix it is then the reduction.
thank you for that, Claire.
Jordan.
Okay, along the line that, questioning that Luke had, so we have been talking about getting this truck for a while. Did we have it? Can you remind me, did we have it in past budgets? This proposed to buy this truck?
It was not in the budget, and James, you can explain the money piece of it. Go ahead.
Yeah, the budget, I think, has always had a large amount for this type of repair, and whether we spent that or spend it on a truck to do that, we could have done. But it wasn't until one of the employees at the city really pushed this, Tillman Bennett, and he found a truck himself, and we ended up bidding for it and got it. So this was bought from the city of Springfield through a bid process, and put the cameras in it. So he really pushed for it, and we got it done. So it's available now.
So I guess, yeah, there was budget money. We did not specifically identify this in the budget going into this fiscal year, but we had, like I said, we had $400,000 towards the TVing in contract services, and we just didn't spend that. We spent much less than that and purchased.
We hadn't spent it previously. That's what I
We
meant.
have spent, yes, we've spent, I don't know how much we historically have spent for that, but we've budgeted about $400,000 a year.
Oh, because we
towards-
have been contracting it out.
Right, right.
Okay.
And so she didn't contract it out, we got the truck, and now we don't need to contract it out.
Okay, and that's the VAC-con truck purchase?
No.
No.
No, that's a different vehicle.
That's a different vehicle. What is this purchase of the VAC-con truck?
So that would be to replace a VAC-con, and that's a different vehicle. It's extremely old, and this is a placeholder for that if we decide to purchase it.
And that essentially is a vacuum that sucks junk out of the lines.
How much did we spend on the new TV truck?
How much did we spend on the, I know the upfitting was a little over 150.
Yeah, the vehicle itself, I think, was around $40,000 to $45,000. But the camera equipment was about $150,000 to $160,000. The cameras, monitors, all the equipment.
So we're into about 210, 220?
225, I think, wasn't it?
For something that we budgeted $400,000 for.
Yeah.
That we didn't do that in years past.
I've been asking for it
I know.
5 years.
He has
Lance was always,
Yeah.
it's going to be 650 grand and we're pushing it.
Okay, I'll back Lance up because I'm the Public Works assistant. No, as good as gold. Lance is right. A brand new truck would have cost in that sort of vein, and as James has said, Tillman did make great effort to go out and find a second-hand vehicle that had very low mileage on it, that is a really good truck, and came to us and asked, what do you think? Can we do this? And we all agreed it was the right way to move forward.
Brian?
I was going to say, at one point, I remember coming to council, and we were pursuing a grant for an electric one.
That is correct, but we did not get that.
So there's been attempts.
Yeah.
Jonathan?
Okay, thank you. My question about the truck, you'd mentioned that there was a budget for contract services. Was that an ongoing
Yes.
thing every year?
Yes.
So will we be seeing, I guess, just the maintenance on this truck? It will basically be how much we'll be spending for the life of the truck rather than the $400,000 each year for the contracting. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct. Plus, it's the staff to operate it.
Yeah, okay.
We are truly hoping that, I truly believe that once we have the familiarity and the experience with the truck, we'll actually be making money with that truck by renting it out and servicing other agencies who have already shown interest in us coming and helping them.
Okay, very good.
Ready to move on to stormwater? We're getting this. I think this is the last Public Works slide, so we're almost through it. Highlights for stormwater. Storm drain and catch basin upgrades with the Ida Street improvement project, as well as the Douglas Avenue improvement project. We continued work on the stormwater master plan, and we included updating modeling of the Salem ditch, which is going to be really helpful for us in coordination and collaboration with the San Am Water Control District. We completed the feasibility study for the Wilco Road area and industrial area. And then we're actually moving into the planning and design for the congressionally directed spending funds for a regional water quality facility that was informed by the Wilco Road industrial area. We'll be doing storm drain and catch basin upgrades with the Westtown project. We also did a Jetters Way catch basin project. That's just repairing another lake, a littler lake, depends on when you look at it, at Jetters Way in Ida. So that's a project that actually is happening in the near future. And then we also did water quality manholes at Evergreen and Maple in the Westtown area, or we will be doing that as part of the Westtown project. For 25-27, again, increased focus on asset management, planning for deferred maintenance and replacement costs. We hope that we will be completing the stormwater master plan, certainly within this biennium, but in 2026, we'll be designing the regional stormwater facility in the Wilco Road area, and doing at least one water quality manhole in compliance with TMDL goals. Questions on stormwater?
I just want to make sure we're working closely with Santiam Water Control District to make sure we meet all the MOU requirements with them, because I don't know if hopefully we've talked to them about what our plans are with stormwater and where we're spending our money, so we meet all the requirements.
Yeah, we certainly are working much closer with them than we have in the past. I meet with Brent at least monthly, if not more. We sometimes meet weekly. That's one of the reasons why we amended the Stormwater Master Plan project to include the modeling of Salem Ditch. That was extremely important to them and is important for other projects. So we're definitely working closely with them. That doesn't mean that there isn't still areas where we need to collaborate a little more, but I think we've got a pretty good relationship and talking and sharing, and I may not fully understand something, and we talk it through and bring other people in. So as best we can, I think we're moving in a good direction.
Mr. Hayes?
The Wilco Road industrial area, are we talking about the old Dozler property that's out there? Okay. So in other words, we're still waiting for that big football field ditch like you have on Kindle Way?
It wouldn't look exactly like that. And we need to work through some issues, and we need to wait for the stormwater
Actually,
master
I don't
plan.
care if it
Yeah.
looks like that at all, to be honest. I just want to make sure that's what we're
Yeah,
talking about.
it's a regional water quality
And the
facility.
idea was to do that to get
Economic development.
you bet, because they didn't want to pay for that, so we're trying to take
Right.
care of that.
And
So
actually,
we're
the
still
federal
on that.
government.
We're still on that project.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Luke?
The lake over by the fire department, that wasn't there before the IDA project got started. Or, I mean, it wasn't nearly as bad.
Yeah, my understanding, and Barry, you might have more information, is that it wasn't created by the Ida Street project, but it was exacerbated by the Ida Street project. And essentially the fix is that they need to lower that manhole. I believe that's what the plan is.
I am going to confuse everybody and use different terminology. I call them mud tanks. You guys call them catch basins, I believe, and Julia just called
Mud tanks is what he said.
What did you think?
I don't know. I just could tell people couldn't understand what you said.
Anyway, the thing that catches the water on the corner in the ground is 2 inches above the natural ground level, and therefore it doesn't do anything. It can't get rid of the water, and that's what causes that ponding on the corner of Jutta and Ida Street. It was exacerbated by the restoration work associated with Ida, because the water was actually draining down round the corner and out into Ida Street, and it can no longer do that. We currently have ongoing investigation work with Canyon Construction to, in actual fact, be able to lower that catch basin. Thank you. I've got it stuck in my mind. I've always called them mud tanks, but we've got an ongoing piece of work that is likely to lower that catch basin on the corner so that it can be actually get rid of the water. Now, there is an issue associated with this in that the pipework goes across Jutta Street and down and away from Jutta Street itself to get rid of it. We are going, as we've already talked and looked at, putting a new force main in Jutta Street to the wastewater treatment plant, so we don't want to dig up that road plus then dig it up for the stormwater, then renew it and renew it again. So we're trying to coordinate a minimised restoration work for the current situation and repair it totally and properly when we do the force main in Jutta Street itself. okay, which is not programmed immediately. But the immediate fix is a simple fix of lowering the tank itself.
Okay. Are we paying for that, or is the company that put it in and exasperated the problem going to pay for that?
As I understand it right now, the city's paying for it.
Because they didn't,
They did what they were told.
they did what they were
Yes.
told to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Leonard? Stormwater? Jordan?
Go on, go on.
Did they know that it was going to exacerbate the problem
I
by
don't
doing that?
I don't believe they did. Honestly, I don't believe that anybody that actually did the work or physically put the Ida Street work in place was thinking about what was happening on Judder Street itself. The puddling already existed because the mud tank was in actual fact higher than the drainage path in any case. So when the guys constructed the Ida Street work, I believe they would have blindly, and I probably would have done it myself, just said, oh, there's a catch basin on the corner here that solves that problem, let's just put in our work, we're good as gold. And didn't really think about it, to be quite honest, until after the fact. So, no, I can't point fingers this time.
So is the whole Ida Street project done in a vacuum where it's done and none of the side streets are taken into consideration, like the entire way? Is this a problem
No,
going the entire way down the street?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no because in reality, I know that there are several cross elements associated with the Ida Street sewer and reconstruction that impact the other intersections, and there is no other issue that I know of down the street. It would be normal that coordination and matching of grades, etc., would be done in the design and restoration of these projects. It is just one of those things. I'm going to say that we can't do things without at least one fault, and if not several. There's always an issue that we come back in construction and fix afterwards. So, no, I'm not going to point the fingers at anyone specifically, and I'm not going to say that it's something that it's just one of those things, unfortunately. And we have them occur regularly.
Okay. Thank you.
Julia, dear?
Yes.
Okay, so with stormwater, we have, not only for us sitting here at the tables, but for our viewers at home, I've counted 6 more funds. And so, like we did last night, it's 8 o'clock. I'll look around the room and say, would we like to take a quick stretch break since we've been sitting for 2 hours? And if you could elaborate as to how long the 6 more funds might take, and then what would we be doing after that?
So we've got the system development charge funds, and those I think will be fairly quick, and then we have facilities, and that's pretty much it as far as our presentation. So I think it will go fairly quick to get to that point, again, depending on questions. And then I don't know, I guess it's up to you, I would like to get questions out on the table, clarifications out on the table. I don't know that you guys will necessarily be able to get a decision within 45 minutes, but so I'm thinking if we can get through the presentations, get questions out on the table, thoughts out on the table, and then we'll probably be getting close to that 9 o'clock hour.
Okay, let's come back at 10 minutes after 8, please.
You ready?
Okay, Julia, take it away, please.
So I think that like I said, the SDC funds are going to be pretty quick. So I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So So the SDCs are charged for new construction at the time of building permit. In August, SDCs will be increased per the construction cost index, as shown in the engineer news record for water, stormwater parks. And then council's actually looking at a updated SDC methodology for wastewater and streets. And so the expectation is that that they would adopt that new SDC at that time. We really didn't assume any major I'll get to that in a second. So Parks SDC, this fiscal year, we collected about $12,000. And like I said, we have very high expectations for SDC development, and that's based on some larger residential developments that Jennifer mentioned in her presentation. That assumes they all come in and that they are pulling building permits, because that's when they pay their system development charges. So that's why I'm like, I don't know that we'll really realize all of these, but we wanted to anticipate that we could, so that we could potentially budget for that. So that's why there's a little asterisk against all of these, because it's a high number. We'll see whether or not we get there, but we definitely see that over the next 4 years, there's a very high likelihood that we will get those numbers. So in the Parks SDC, we're forecasting about $3 million. We're transferring $900,000 to the Parks Fund for the Mill Creek Park amenities and a park master plan update. In the street SDC, we've collected about $86,000 this fiscal year. We're forecasting $2.2 million in SDCs. The budget calls for transferring $1.3 million to the street fund for design of Kindle Way, a transportation system plan update, and a match for Shaft Road Roundabout if that federal grant actually comes through. The water SDC, we collected about $18,000 this year. We're forecasting $3.2 million in SDC fees. We're transferring, again, depending on revenues, we would be transferring $2.8 million to the water fund for the ASR project, the water valve and Pine Street pump VFD, master plan update, and other plant or system improvements to be determined. The wastewater SDC, we've collected $13,500 approximately. We're forecasting $2.8 million, and we would be transferring $737,000 to the wastewater fund for Ida Street sewer pipe upsizing project, the SBR project, Mill Creek force main, and influent and blower improvements. In the stormwater SDC, we've collected about $20,000, and the budget, we anticipate potentially $1.8 million in SDCs, and we would be transferring $2.2 million to the stormwater fund for a master plan for the master plan update and the regional stormwater facility. And that concludes our SDC funds. So I will turn it over to James for facilities. Oh, sorry, questions. No, just no questions. That's so perfect.
Jonathan?
I believe Councilor Orthutter came up first. Okay. Those are large forecasts for SDC we're pulling in, which means we're doing larger developments, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the big thing is that it's residential developments, and so every lot has a pretty significant system development charge, and so that's why that's so large. And Jennifer or James, I don't know if you wanted to talk about what assumptions went into those SDCs. Do you want Jennifer? Yeah. Jennifer's going to come up. Sorry, Barry.
So as we said, the SDCs don't come into play until we get a building permit, so it's kind of down the road. But when James asked me to estimate it, I only used all the pre-applications that came in. So I That's all I did. I didn't forecast additional residential units, and it came out to be around 840 units, about half being single-family homes and half being multifamily.
And so that the likelihood of us actually having within the next 2 years 800 building permits pulled, that means that they're going from land use through that process, through the engineering review process, and submitting building permits and getting building permits. I think it's probably unlikely, but that's where that number came from.
So when I worked with James to develop this number, I did ask, do you want a realistic time frame, and he was like, go for the full amount. So like we're saying, it probably will be more than just the 2 years, but if it were to happen, and like I said, it's not anything that I'm projecting, it's literally what I've gotten as pre-applications all over the city, mostly annexations, and concepts that people brought before me.
And the reason why we want to assume that big revenue is that, as we've been talking about, we've got big projects, we've got expensive projects, and we want to have the ability to do those projects, start those projects if we have the funds available.
Okay, so it sounds like we're coming into another cycle of large developments going on that we're needing to be factoring in with all of this for the city? Like, just is there thoughts of how we're going forward?
Well, I mean, that's just I guess the reality of what's been coming forward for people developing their properties in subdivisions. Again, we'll see what.
Yeah, most of them are annexations, so they'll be coming before the city council. So this isn't something like that the planning commission will just look at. So
Okay,
we'll have we'll have some notice, and you'll be well aware of these things coming down the pike.
Okay. And then I just want to clarify that we're giving you budgeting authority in this, but you would be making the discretionary spending based on the actual money coming in.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I want to really stress is don't expect all these projects to get done, because the chances of all these projects getting done are probably not super likely, but it gives us the authority to do it if we have the funds.
Jordan?
Okay, that was kind of along the lines of my questioning too, was that if the expectation was that we were actually going to be able to do all of these things, because we have that property next to the Foothills Church that is sitting and hasn't been developed for years.
Oh, I have to mention that some of these potential annexations would not be able to happen if we didn't do the sewer project. So the sewer project that we talked about for, it's like 2.4, one of our projects, it said that the summer of 2026 it would be constructed. So quite a few, maybe 200 and 300 of those units would not be able to come until that sewer was upgraded. So the developers have talked to me about they might go for approval contingent on that happening. So you might hear about these things before the 2026 summer, but they wouldn't be able to pull building permits until that time anyway.
Okay. And then my next question is, did any of this take into account, we kind of touched on it briefly, but did any of this take into account us probably potentially increasing the SEC charges for stormwater and what that's going to look like?
I don't.
Because I know it's not going to like stop all of it, but it is going to impact.
Are you talking about the wastewater?
The wastewater
Yeah.
SDC, I know it's going to impact some building.
I don't know. It might impact some. It does not
To
assume.
say that it's not going to impact any is,
Yeah.
is probably not the case.
Yeah.
But it will impact some.
That's probably true. I don't believe it assumed that, so, which is fine. So, I mean, so I think that it assumed, did it assume a CPI or no? It just assumed the current rates, which I'm fine with because I think it's already pretty aggressive. So, and that just means if we collect more, then we have more money to spend next biennium.
Okay. So we're just under the understanding that this is like what you want to do if this money comes in.
Right.
How are we going to prioritize if all this money doesn't come in?
We would work with Barry and probably council and determine what things need to happen first. Some of the things are already in process. I mean, you've got the Mill Creek Park, that's going to have to go to the Mill Creek Park.
Okay.
So I think it depends on,
Just kind of depends on what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve?
Jennifer, you said 140 units? I had to take a double take on that. How many?
more than that.
Yeah, 840.
840,
That's how
all right,
many
that's what I
I've
thought I heard.
gotten. Yeah.
Holy smokes. Okay. All right. That wasn't my question, but I had to take a double take on that. You're going to give me a heart attack here. But I guess my question was about the regional stormwater facility. Are we talking Wilco Road or?
Yes.
So, and that wouldn't happen unless the federal grant was contingent on the federal grant,
That
right?
one is in hand. So that was the one that was funded last federal fiscal year.
Oh, so we do have
We
the
do
money
have that.
for Wilco Road
Right.
and the stormwater facility there?
Yes.
On the Dozler
Yeah.
property?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought that was still in the
No,
wind.
the Mill Creek Force Main and the roundabout were the ones that were in, but
all
then
right,
out,
all
and that
right.
are,
Well, that's actually positive news for our industrial area, so that might actually bring us in some business. Okay, thanks.
okay. Now, since there are no more questions, we'll go to James to talk about facilities.
So the facilities fund is the 15th of 15 funds. So this is the fund that collects money from the other funds, some of the other funds, but it is meant to be like a savings building account for a future city hall or civic center. So this has transfers built from admin, police, public works admin, planning, and court. If you recall from the last budget, these transfers were eliminated from the budget, so nothing was collected in the current year. We did have some expenditures in the year. The projects this year, on the next slide, were for the kitchen behind you and the community center here, the kitchen remodel, and then $33,000 for the library for those 3 HVAC units that are underway. So for the next year, or the next 2-year budget, we have plans to complete the conference room at the City Hall. That's underway right now, so it's partly funded in this year and it will be finished next year. And then there's a contingency for the Moose Lodge. We're not sure what's going to happen there, but there may be some renovations to that building. There's some fence repairs that need to be done behind City Hall next to some residences. That fence is falling over in parts. And then there's a contingency here for just any unknown facility issues that may arise in the next 2 years. So that's the facilities fund. So in the budget before you, we've restarted those transfers proposed in the amount of $100,000 per year coming from those 5 areas.
And we do plan on having a conversation with council in the near future to discuss more thoroughly that fund and how we're using it. For council, you may recall that we came to you in a work session earlier this year to discuss a city hall remodel. The estimated cost of that was pretty much almost the entire fund, and so we're not proposing to put that in the budget because I just couldn't justify that. It's still something that is probably very important, but we've got other facilities that we need to better understand and plan for, and so as we have the new asset management, or the asset, I don't know the name of the person, but the planner, the asset planner, yeah, I think that will also help with us really honing in on what this fund needs to cover, and probably have some tough conversations going into the next biennium about contributions to that. But we weren't ready to do that for this budget.
So we can take questions on the facilities fund right now?
Yeah, I had one question on that. So we can transfer from the facilities funds to any of the other funds, right? We don't have to spend that money on facilities? It's not an enterprise fund, is that the right term?
That's correct. It's a capital project fund, so it can receive transfers from funds that it can benefit.
I think we discussed last year, though, when we were looking at this, that because contributions were made by enterprise funds, it can't just all go to the general fund. We have to be thoughtful about if we put money, move it, we have to be thoughtful of where that money initially came from.
Yeah, in the past, we did look back, and this fund started in 2002, and we found transfers from the water fund, wastewater, streets, and library. So I think at the time it was meant to pull in money from anywhere it could to build a possible city hall.
Yeah, it kind of makes it muddy where you can send the money to then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bad.
All right, I was just curious because I was just thinking street fund, so I was wondering about that.
Luke?
Are those, is 100,000 pulled equally from each of those funds, or is it pulled?
No, it's, I'd have to look back at what I created, but I think it's based on a number of staff and kind of a size of the budget type of thing. Basically, let's say police would pay more than planning. Police has 13-ish staff, planning has 1 or 2, and doesn't require as much space. So if we built a new city hall, we would focus a lot on the police construction for the building, and not as much on planning. So there would be more transferred from police, as an example.
Okay, thank you.
So if there aren't any more questions there, I wanted James, before we complete our presentation, to go back to the streetlight conversation that we had last night. He did a little bit more, he actually had a meeting with someone today and has some information to share, and I guess a correction on the number that it would actually be if we were to actually do that streetlight conversion project.
Yeah, so this was something that we had considered. It's not currently in your budget, and we had thought it was $120,000. I did talk to Pacific Power today, the person that implements these type of LED conversions, had a phone conversation and found out that the Energy Trust of Oregon incentive was not included off of that 120. So she's refined the numbers, and it's still looking like a $120,000 project, but the Energy Trust kicks in about $56,000. So that reduces this to about a $65,000 one-time cost, which reduces the return on investment to less than 3 years. And then every month after that, we'd be saving about $1,900 a month in energy costs. So this appears to be a very good investment. It includes a lot of different assumptions, but it's basically replacing all of the 552 bulbs on the street lights with LEDs, and there's some options of the number of, I think this is a lumen number, 3,000 or 4,000, and there's some decorative lamps that are options that are not included in here. Here we go. So currently we have 38 of the decorative lights, the third one. These are located near the hospital and some of the new housing development areas. I can't remember which ones, but some of the newer developments have these decorative posts. The replacement would be the first picture, the post top. So that's much less expensive. We could continue to have that decorative style, but it comes with a price tag of $840. So this about $65,000 or maybe $70,000 in one-time costs assumes those 38 being the number one, and then predominantly the rest of them being the style in the middle, the Cobra style. Some of the other positives that the lady shared with me is that this is a dark sky compliant project which reduces light pollution. And oh yeah, she told me that Sublimity's doing it, so they're doing it this summer, so I just had to throw that out there.
They're going to be glowing.
Not if they're dark sky compliant.
Dark sky compliant means you can see the stars in the sky. It doesn't project light upward at all. It's all coming down. And they do have options of shields that they can install if it's too bright, like at your house or some areas like that. So there are some adjustments that they can make. They also help with the online posts and getting the word out and the changes that are coming to the city, so help inform the citizens of what's going to come forth.
This slide shows what the dark sky compliant lighting looks like.
The choices being the 3,000 and 4,000, those third and fourth lights from the left.
So we just wanted to provide that information to you before you start deliberating. And then we also, as part of the resolution that council passed for the comprehensive street funding, where council directed us to take 15% of the franchise fees and put it towards streets, which is one of why we were proposing to take that project out of the general fund budget. The council also asked us to do an additional 15% cut, and so we wanted to share with you sort of if council wanted to take even more franchise fees out of the general fund. Go back there. Essentially what we would propose to be cut would be the community center upgrades, and then also the Marion County Radio project would be another project that we would recommend not funding. And that, I believe, concludes our presentation. And now for discussion.
As a quick review, I see three cards up. And then I'm going to propose a kind of a catch-all here. So let's have the three of you go, and then I'll get my spiel out. So, Luke?
Regarding the lights, I'd like to see that done so we don't have this conversation again and again and again and again. Just because I like to pull triggers on things that save me money. And while this isn't necessarily my money, it is my community, and getting it done quicker is always cheaper than kicking it down the line. And with prices looking at going up 11% a year, I think the $17,000 a month savings is conservative. That's what our projected Pacific Power bill is looking like. Can you explain the fees cut option? I was not
Yeah, so the direction was, as part of the overall strategy where they raised the street fee and they gave some direction on prioritizing of how we prioritize street improvement projects, they said 15% of the franchise fees, which historically had gone to the general fund 100%, 15% of that needed to go to the street fund. And so we went through the exercise of saying, okay, here's our general fund budget. We need to cut 15, we need to have 15%, $287,000 go to streets. And so through that exercise to get to that number, that's where the street light, that's one of the projects that was cut through that. And then they also wanted to say, rather than like a directive, you shall, they said, we want to see what you would also cut if we asked for an additional 15%. And so this is our proposal, similar to last year when the request was, what would it look like? What would you cut, city staff, if we said cut $300,000 out? We came with a list of projects that this is what we would do. And so this is essentially that exercise of, if we were to cut an additional 15% out, this is what we would propose.
Just a carryover exercise from last year.
But, yeah.
Carryover exercise.
And to be clear, we are not proposing to do that. This is not what we would recommend. We believe our budget is what is best, but if that is, if the budget committee wants to see more money allocated to streets from the franchise fees, this is what we would do.
David?
Thank you, Committee Chair. Thank you, Julia. I have just like two questions on this. My first one is just sort of, well, I'm kind of curious what we would need to do to modify the Resolution 1122 to make it so that staff could allocate enough funding necessary to do the light replacement project. That's my first question. And then my second question is more philosophical in nature, and that is, how did we arrive at these items to accomplish that 15%? What, I guess, in a few words or less, I guess, how did we arrive at the decision to opt for these things in this budgetary exercise?
So for the first question with the resolution, I think really it's if you as a budget committee and ultimately the council adopts the budget knowing that you're making that decision, I think that's, the resolution isn't an ordinance, it's a direction, this is what we want you to do. You can make different decisions, but we're bound by the direction that we've been given to come with a budget that does that. So I think you could just make a motion, and if it's adopted, then you're fine. As far as how did we get to those cuts, it was $287,000 that we had to cut from the budget that we had already scrutinized quite aggressively to get to a relatively balanced budget. And that's a big number, and there's really not a lot of places where you can make that number up easily. And so these were some big pots that were relatively discretionary, I guess. It wasn't bodies that we would be cutting. That really we're talking about bodies if we're not talking about these things.
Thank you.
Steve?
I guess, shoot. This darn thing. So my question was about the lighting again. I know Councilor Patty said something about it, but you said it was $64K that we would have to cover of that, and $56K was a grant from Oregon Energy Trust?
Yeah, I would say 65,000 would be a good budget for this project.
Did you happen to come up with any ideas of how to fund that $64K, or are you just throwing those numbers out there?
Well, again, with this was our first, ideas for cuts. So we could reduce one or more of those projects to come up with the 65,000, or you could reduce the transfer to the street fee, from the original 287. It can be.
I'm not willing to cut streets.
Those are the kind of the bigger options out there right now.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Jordan?
Thank you. Okay. So my initial thought is we really need to stop thinking of this street fund or funding the streets with this 15%, that's a non-negotiable. In my mind, that's a non-negotiable. That's at the top of the list. That's paying yourself first. We're doing that. That's what we're doing. That's not, we're going to cut that so we can pay for something else. That's not something we're going to do. That's not on the table. We're not going to do this sustainable project. We're going to take that 30,000. We're cutting that out.
So just to be clear, if we don't do that project, we're not going to help you meet about 8 of your goals.
Okay, but if we don't fund the streets, we're not going to be able to pave our roads.
Right, I guess I'm saying there might be other things that we can do that are not goal-related, like the community center remodel or upgrade. I mean, it's up to you, but I just want to make it clear, we're tasked to put forward a budget that addresses your goals, and that is tied to multiple of your goals. So we will not be able to achieve many of them.
Okay. But I don't think it's fair to take something that is very important and that we have stressed, that is very important to us, that is the streets, and to say, even in here, that, well, we had to cut all this stuff so that we could give you what you wanted. This is, that this is important. We have been fighting for this. We've been telling you this is what we want, and we still have to fight for this for $286,000. We have to fight for $286,000.
Yeah, the budget already takes that out. What we're talking about is putting money back and where that comes from.
No, but you're saying, okay, well, so
if
then
you
we
put
can do
the streets, yeah, if you do the
so
street
then, no,
lights.
but you're like, oh, well, if you want to do the street lighting, then you should take it out of that. But we're not talking about, oh, well, if you want to do the street lighting, then we should take it from the pool. Oh, we should take it from the parks. We should take it from the library.
It has to come from the general fund.
Yes, but the general fund funds those things.
Okay. It's up to the budget committee. You can direct the budget where you choose. Yeah.
I have another question. Yesterday, you guys were talking about the T-Mobile grant. Can you explain what that is? Because we've never talked about that before.
For the community center, yeah, we applied for, we applied for a grant that would essentially help us fund some of these improvements in the community center. If we got that, it would. Speak, sorry.
I believe they were going to announce the recipients in mid-May, which we're just about in, so. I believe we applied for the max 50,000.
50,000, yeah.
Can I ask a question about this second 15%? So this is what happens, just so I'm clear, this is what happens if we do 30%
Exactly.
transfer.
Correct.
From the general fund or franchise fees to the street fund.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure I was clear on that.
Can I have a clarifying question on that? So this is what you're proposing, but we can say, we can say what funds we want decreased.
These are all from the general fund, and this is essentially the exercise that we did last year. If we're going to cut, again, we're not, this is if we did 30%, which is not in the budget and not what we're proposing. If
No, but we don't necessarily have to do these.
No, absolutely. Well, you don't have to do it at all. We
No.
could take the slide away and not talk about it anymore. That we just were asked to do that, and we wanted to be transparent and do what the council had asked us to do, which is show what we would cut if we had to do an additional 15%. And yes, it does not necessarily have to be that, but it's at the fund level, and really, if we're not cutting this, if we're not cutting that, we're cutting bodies. If we're asked to do an additional 15% beyond what we already have in the budget.
Okay, real quick. I'm not necessarily advocating for that necessarily. I just want to point out that we're raising the levies. We're asking the taxpayers to raise the levies. For the parks, that is $340,000 a year. And then we're also taking out of the general fund $397,000 for the parks. For the pool, the tax is $299,000, and out of the general fund, it's $273,000 for those things. And so we're not decreasing what we're taking out of the general fund, and we're increasing the levies. But we're still not funding our streets. So that's just a comment that I'm
And I guess
making.
we're significantly funding more streets than we have ever before. We're having an additional almost $300,000 from the franchise fees, but on top of that, we are also funding more streets. So, I mean, we are putting a lot of money towards streets.
But we're funding the streets. We increased our street fee to $10. So our fee for service is $465,000 that we're asking. So everyone's paying that, and then we're paying out of the general fund. So we are putting more money for the streets, but I'm just saying
So I guess, Chair, in the essence, or in the consideration of time, we got about 10 more minutes before the witching hour, and what I'm really hoping is that we get questions, scenarios that you want us to work on over the next day so that you guys can make a decision at the next meeting. I don't think you're going to get to a decision tonight, so I want to make sure that we're getting the questions out, if that's okay.
That's what I was going to propose before we had more nameplates come up. I was going to ask you folks if you had, since last night was a big information-filled night, and it was 24 hours ago, and we had a couple people that needed to come in late, did anybody have any review questions from the 7 items, the 7 funds that makes up the general fund? Anywhere from police down to street lights as just like a catch-all? Mr. Patty?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, real quick, Julia, in going away with the question consideration for this evening, I'd like staff or you specifically to do some sort of exercise when you're looking at these public works leadership positions. I'd like to see them funded at a higher level or something, because it doesn't seem like you're able to fill them currently at what they're at as far as salary tables and things like that. I think this is worthy of some consideration and maybe coming back to us with an increased figure for those amounts so that we can get those people into key roles and we can administer these projects that we want done in this city. And so I think that would be worthwhile exercise to go through at our next meeting, because it sounds like we're going to have one.
Ms. Walker?
One of the things I hear is streets. And I know last year, someone proposed that we fund a bond issue or float a bond issue. And the number that sticks in my mind was $10 million. And I think if we truly want to quit kicking the can down the road and accelerate the repairs of our streets, that is the way it's going to get done. I don't see how we can possibly accelerate, given the budget constraints we have, given the possibility of a drawdown and everything else that's out there. I just think that the most prudent way to go about accelerating the street repairs is to put a bond issue in front of the city and let them make that determination, and if they say no, then that relieves part of our responsibility. If they say yes, then we clearly have a mandate to go ahead. And the other thing I would say is I noticed that there's a 28% increase in our budget from last year to this budget. Now that's pretty significant. And I think it's our responsibility to look at that pretty hard. Oh, and I will agree with Mr. Patty on one thing. I think if we're going to get a lead engineer, we're going to have to pay him more money. And one of the things I would think is, in order to attract a lead engineer, maybe we give up one of the minor positions to spend the same money and yet get a lead engineer.
Denise.
I almost forgot about this. In a conversation in the past, there was some talk of who pays the water fee, and like when we had that little increase, who that affected. So can you explain to me, because from what I was told, apartments, the manufactured home parks, there's some exceptions to that, and I don't, or something, I don't know.
Everybody pays it. It's just if you're in an apartment complex, it might be the landlord and there's one meter, and that may be paid for through the rent. James, do you want to?
So do they pay this at the same rate per apartment?
I'll let James answer that.
If you're just talking about the water fee itself, we have had increases in most of the areas. The single-family residence increased about 2%. Multifamily was 1.5%, and then irrigation 16%. So overall, it's like a 3% revenue increase for the fund, but it's broken up differently by those groups. That's just the water. So then there's the stormwater and sewer that also had different changes.
So are the manufactured home parks treated like a normal residence, or are they treated like an apartment?
Again, this is different based on different funds. So for the stormwater rate,
Street fee.
Okay.
Street fee on the water bill.
The street fee.
There we
Okay.
go. Street,
Okay.
the street fees on the water bill. Okay, so it's different. Why?
Because it is. Because of the methodology that goes into it.
Hey, I haven't asked any questions.
I know. I'm just. It all goes into the work that went into the initial methodology. There are different trip rates. There's different usage rates. There's a lot of, there's a lot of detail and science that goes into all of these methodologies. I can't explain it in detail.
No.
But that's because it is. And I'm sorry, I can't give you a better answer than that right now. We do have a budget to update the methodology and look at that. That is included in the budget. We could take that out. but that would come
It
out of.
just seems like lost revenue to me. I mean, just being out there and people living in these different, I mean, yeah.
But again,
But I
we
remember-
can't change that, certainly at the Budget Committee level,
Right.
and we can't change that without some justification that goes into it. And so I understand it doesn't seem fair. We need to look at it again, update it, but that's the why, is that there's science and thought that went into it when it was developed to begin with.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'm going to go from my left to right. So let's start with Leonard, please.
This might be for the police chief. Marion County Radio, what is that? I don't think I missed it last time. It just didn't get explained.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I do, we can answer that. I guess I would like to, if we could, I mean, we're at 9 now. If we could just get the questions out, and then we can answer that in a memo, or we can answer that at the next meeting, rather than taking the time to actually, sorry, I just, after you got up here,
No,
I just
you're fine.
realized. So if we could try to just get the questions out, and then we can answer them for you all, rather than taking the time to answer them here, since, if that's, okay. Sorry.
Can we let Chief answer that one? Because I
It's
like
up
law
to you.
enforcement.
Yes.
So there's been conversation for years and years about consolidating radios. It kind of goes to each agency has different radios. Some work off different frequencies. We see this when we have large calls. Most recently at Silverton, they had the active threat call, and all the responding units potentially had different radios and couldn't talk to each other. Some of that comes to dispatch centers too, but the idea is with the radio project that everyone on the county, fire, police, would be on one system, and the county, Marion County, received some funds after the wildfires to begin this project. So it's a system. It's not just, they talk about radio, but to talk on a radio, you need voters and repeaters and towers and dispatch equipment. And so it's a whole system really build to get everyone on a 7-800. So there's a lot to radios. There's UHF, VHF, digital. So it would be giving us new radios to then be able to be on the same system with others in the county. And so there's a lot of discussion still. County is moving forward. The number that I have budgeted is hopefully the high end. There's no hard numbers given quite yet. And so we would like to be a part of that for a lot of reasons. Just the partnerships with other agencies, being able to be, we sometimes run up the canyon and cover up in Mill City, and so to be able to push the lapel key and be able to speak to the other officers in our dispatch is, pretty important. If we have a big incident, that we could speak to everyone that's on scene. But it's a system. It says radio, but it's the whole system, so we can all talk.
Thank you. You got it. Okay.
Luke, if you want to get your question out.
I was just wondering if, I kind of said this earlier, but I want to confirm that we can get something, just at least a proposal for getting the streetlights updated. And I'd like to agree with Mr. Patty and Mr. Walker on their statements of paying the guy more and going for a bond for streets, because that's the only way I can see moving forward to any real actionable financing.
Jonathan, your question? Jordan, your question?
Last year, we budgeted $40,000 for our community neighborhood grant, and this year we're not.
So, sorry. We actually budgeted $15,000 last year. We
Okay,
budgeted
well-
$40,000 the year before.
Okay, the
This year, we're
previous
actually budgeting $20,000 a year. That's being paid for out of the Community Prosperity
Yes.
Initiative. Yeah.
So in previous years, we have budgeted significant amounts of money for the neighborhood grant. So can any of that money be utilized for the streetlights?
Not that grant, I doubt it.
We'd have to look and see whether or not, that's a question that we will follow up on.
Thank you. So we had 15,000. So could that 15 that we're not using for that
Well,
grant money?
it's still, it's just, I see what you're kind of saying.
If we're not using, we were using it last year for that. We're not using it this year for that. It went somewhere else, but.
Right.
So why can't it be used for this? That's my question.
Jonathan?
I guess my question was, you listed those three things for that extra 15% out of the general fund. I would just want to know if there was anything that we would have as staff recommendations besides that to cut. You'd mentioned that we would be starting cutting employees at that point, but I just want to know if there was some other things that could be trimmed so that we can have a better discussion about what are some possible monies we can shift around.
Okay, thanks.
Are you looking for a particular dollar amount?
Not really a particular dollar amount, just things that you feel would be more able to be cut without causing disruption or issues or problems. Things that could be trimmed.
So besides that 15%?
Besides those three things, if there's
Yeah.
anything else, just if there is anything else.
Okay.
Basically, what else was on the table when those three were besides bonus?
Yeah, we can, yes, we'll respond to that. I mean, there's not much. Yeah.
Denise? Mr. Bryan?
I guess what I'd like, Julia, is if you could list out the largest expenditures in the budget for the council goals.
Okay.
That will give us an idea to maybe flex on the goals. I mean, some of these goals in here, for example, the housing one, I'd like to see how that pencils out.
Okay.
So if you could do that, that'd be great.
While you're writing, Julia, thank you for making that suggestion about just getting the questions out, because it looks like we have to come back another night. Give me some guidance here. Where are we at? We're just going to go ahead and adjourn?
Yeah, I think that's what I would recommend, is that unless there are any other questions that you want to have answered, staff will work on getting something out. Hopefully, we can get that out tomorrow afternoon to the Budget Committee, get these questions to answers out, and then we reconvene at 6 o'clock on Thursday. We will have a taco bar, chicken taco bar. Don't get too excited because it's homemade, but but it will be good. So.
Okay, we'll call the meeting adjourned at 9:07 p.m. Thank you, YouTube watchers. See you here Thursday night, 6 p.m.
We had like 35